Hello there guys, welcome to episode 5 of How to Program in C++. I know today I said we would be going over specifiers, but I feel like that's a bit too much of an advanced subject for this early on in the series. So I thought we'd tackle something a little bit more fun and useful early on and get straight on with building our first practical application. Basically, what I want to get to next week is building our own calculator. So that means this week I want a very simple calculator, only one function to it, but we'll expand upon this calculator as we go along. But I feel like it will make things a lot more fun and it will lower the barriers a little bit. I feel like a lot of people will give up early on if we go to such serious stuff. Anyway, so as I said, today's main focus will be on arithmetic operators. But quickly, let's go over what an operator is. Basically, it allows you to operate on variables. When I say this, it allows you to interact with variables, perform actions with them, such as adding them together or subtracting them. The list goes fairly far, but today we're focused on arithmetic operators, which are basically addition, subtraction, multiplication, division, all that kind of thing. But very first, let's talk about the equals operator, which we've already been using fairly often up until now. So let's make ourselves some variables. I'm going to make an integer, and I'm gonna call it num1, num2, result. So we're allocating 3 variables, number 1, number 2, and the result of whatever we do with these 2 variables. So let's give these variables values. So in the main function, I'm gonna type num1 equals 6 and num2 equals num2 equals 3. Okay, so that gives us 2 numbers to work with. But first, as I said, let's talk about the equals operator. So what does the equals operator do? Well, it seems fairly self-explanatory. It sets the first variable that you give equal to the value that you give after the equals sign. In this example, we are setting num1 to a literal constant, which is 6. We'll go over constants in more detail later on, but just know that we're setting num1 to the value 6. That's all you really need to know at the moment. What we could do is set num1 equal to, what would make more sense in this situation, set num2 equal to num1. Now, this would set num2's value equal to num1's value. So num2 would come out as 6. Let's actually demonstrate this really quickly just to give you a better understanding of what's going on. I know this sounds really, really simple, but it is important that you completely grasp all the aspects rather than just kind of assuming certain things. So I'm gonna write the basic stuff that we've been writing all up till now, num2 space, push that stream into there, and then I'm also gonna add an end line, and we're using namespace std, so we don't have to worry about referencing std up here. Okay, let's run this and see what happens. It says num1 equals 6, num2 equals 6. Okay, so I guess we'll come back to that in a little bit, what I wanted to talk about with that, but let's remove that bit of code. You know now that num2, setting one variable to another variable, basically takes the value of the first variable and sets the second variable's value to that value. If you were to later on edit number 2, it would not affect number 1. And that's basically that. One other thing you can do is, with the equals operator, you could set num1 equal to num2 equal to 3. Now what would this do? Well, let's run it and see. Sets both num1 and num2 to 3. Now you could do this like limitly. You could have a big old chain of variables all being set to a number. So that is the equals operator for now. Let's get on with some of these arithmetic operators, because these are hugely useful. You'll be using these all the time. Let's give num1 a base value of 6 and num2 a base value of 3. Okay, so what if we want to add these two variables together? Well, we would use the plus or addition operator. So let's use that. Let's set result equal to num1 plus num2. Okay, can you guess what that would do? Well, let's hold off for a second until I add that to our cout. I'm gonna add string result colon and then stream in the actual result variable and then add an extra for the end line. Okay, let's run it, and yes, as you can see, let me format that a little bit better for you so it's a bit more readable. Num1 equals 6, num2 equals 3, and result equals 9. So we've added 6 and 3 together. Basically, the way this works is you take the value of num1, the value of num2, and add them together. That's all this statement does. So, we've learned add or addition. Let's learn subtraction. So it's basically exactly what you would expect, the minus sign on your keyboard, and run it. And yes, indeed, 6 take away 3 is indeed 3. How about multiplication? Well, there's no multiplication sign on our keyboards, so we had to go with star. This will just multiply the value of the first variable by the value of the second variable. In this case, it will be 6 times 3. Let's run it. Yes, indeed. That is the result we were expecting. Finally, to round out the 4 important ones, division. So division is just a / because again, there's no easy symbol to represent division on our keyboards. This is fairly standard among most computer applications. The division sign will be a / and the multiplication sign will be a star. So let's build and run, and yes, 6 divided by 3 equals 2. It does indeed. Now, what if we were to try and divide it by something that it can't be divided by, such as 4? 6 divided by 4 would give us a decimal result. Well, as we talked about earlier, it will literally just chop off this decimal. But what if we want the decimal? Well, let's take out that comma back there, add a semicolon, and set result to the floating point data type. This'll work, right? Because we're dividing num1 by num2 and we're setting result to that, the value that outputs. And the value that it outputs should be a decimal. But it's not. Okay, so the reason for this is that when you use an arithmetic operator, it will take the data type of the first element of that expression. So in this case it's num1, and num1 is an integer, so the output of this expression will always be an integer regardless of the data type of the variable that you are setting its value. Yes, very confusing trying to word this, but as you can see, that's the result. So if we did want to get the floating point result, there's 2 things we could do. We could either cast these numbers to floating points, which, as I've spoken about earlier, we're not going to go over casting for a little while yet, so the easy solution for now is just to set all of our variables to the data type float, or floating point. So let's do that quickly, just so we can see it all working out. Hit build and run, and yes, 6 divided by 4 is indeed 1.5. We have made it! We have covered 4 basic arithmetic operators. However, there is one more important one that you will probably not see as often, but is genuinely very useful. I use it extremely often in my programming. It might not be apparent now why you would need this, but trust me, when we get to the game side of programming, you will understand. So, this last arithmetic operator that I'm going to talk about is called modulo, or modulus. Its symbol is a percentage sign, sorry. And So you might be thinking, what is modulo or modulus? I've never heard of this concept before. Some of you might have, but in this case, I know a lot of people won't know what this is. It's basically getting the remainder of a division. So if there's a remainder to be had, in this case we're dividing 6 by 4, the remainder would be 2, because there's 1 4 in 6, and then there's 2 that cannot be devised into 4 without going into decimals. Let's try this. This isn't going to work, but I'm going to try it anyway. Here we go. Now, it does not let us, here's the error, it does not let us divide use modulo on a floating point number. That's because of what we just talked about. We're trying to get the remainder, and when you divide two numbers, the floating point numbers, you're going to get a decimal instead of a remainder. So that's not going to work out. So let's change all our data types back to int. Because we've done all this declaring these variables on one line, we can literally just take one data type and change it, which is really nice. And let's try it now. And yes, the remainder of 6 divided by 4 is indeed 2. So that's all the data types we're going over this time. Next time, we will start working on a very simple calculator, and we'll learn some input code so we can do so. And that will be our first first functional program. Okay, hopefully you will stick around for that. Thanks for watching, guys. See you next time.